As we heard, the opposition said that their main claim is euthanasia or assisted suicide is to be used on terminally ill patients, but they brought up a point of an example of a man who was quadriplegic and has to be killed. But last time I checked, being in a wheelchair does not mean that you're terminally ill, nor does it mean you will die. It may be an unfortunate cause, or it may be an unfortunate situation, but it does not mean certain death. And that actually leads me to a point over here that the regulations, because there's actually 4 states that allow, actually I'm sorry, 3 states that allow physician-assisted suicide. That's Oregon, Montana, and Vermont. And the regulations are, that I'm going to be pointing out, because my main claim is that euthanasia is has loopholes in their system that are regulated right now in states. So the regulations are patients can require euthanasia if they have an life expectancy of less than 6 months. The prognosis must be confirmed by a second consulting physician. Both doctors must confirm that the patient is capable of making this decision, and both doctors must confirm that the patient does not have a medical condition that impairs their judgment, and the patient must self-administer the lethal medication. So my first example of a story shows out a loophole. People can pressure the patient to go through the euthanasia. So my first example was about Kate Cheng, who was 85, and she had terminal cancer and told her doctor she wanted assisted suicide. However, she was concerned that it didn't meet the required criteria for mental competence because of dementia. So he declined to write her the requested prescription and instead referred her to a psychiatrist as required by the law. She was accompanied to psychiatrist by her daughter. The psychiatrist found that Kate had lost a short-term memory. It also appeared that her daughter had wanted more interest in Kate's suicide than did the patient herself. So the psychiatrist wrote in his report that while she assisted suicide seemed consistent with Kate's values, she does not seem to be expecting or pushing for the suicide herself. The daughter, so Kate did not have the very high capacity required to weigh options about assisted suicide, and he declined her to authorize a lethal prescription. Kate seemed to accept the verdict, but her daughter did not. Her daughter viewed that the guidelines protecting her mother's life as obstacles in the press interview, called the guidelines to Kate's right to demand the right to die. The psychologist worried about the family pressure, writing that Kate's decision to die may be influenced by her family's wishes. Still, despite the reservations, the psychologist determined that Kate was competent to choose death. Sometime later, Kate went to a nursing home for a week so that her family could have some care, and after she returned home, she declared her desire to take the pills herself and approved the writing of the lethal prescription. That's one of the loopholes that I said with my claim, that basically one of the loopholes is that a person can influence a doctor or a family member, encouraging you to go through with it. Another loophole that I'm bringing out is that people, because one of the things that it said, you have to have a second physician saying that it's okay to go through with it. In another case, soon after the Oregon law allowing a physician to write a lethal prescription for a patient went into effect, Helen asked her physician for one. She had a history of breast cancer and was enrolled in house-based. She had been using a wheelchair for 2 weeks and had some shortness of breath for which she used oxygen. However, she had no pain. She was still doing aerobic exercises regularly. Her physician declined. Helen saw a second physician, and he too declined because he felt she was depressed. Her husband called Compassion in Dying, a group that supports assisted suicide, and they found a willing physician who wrote the prescription, though he admitted he was shaken by Helen's eagerness to die. This also proves to my claim that a person can just go around asking until they get help. I mean, one physician says no, then just keep knocking on a few doors, and eventually you'll find somebody that's going to say yes. That's kind of a loophole in the system, because if a bunch of doctors tell you no, and you find 1 out of 10 to say yes, that's not necessarily right, and it shouldn't be. That's not necessarily saying. Well, it's kind of going backdoor through the system, the loopholes. And there's this statistics on lifenews.com. Says only 2 of the 77 people who died by assisted suicide in Oregon in 2012 were referred for a psychiatric evaluation. This is significant because a study conducted by Oregon researcher Linda found that 15 out of 58 participants in her study were either depressed or experiencing the feelings of extreme hopelessness. I have another case where it's probably too long to go through. So I'll just go back to the case that I just said, where Helen, she felt no pain, but she had cancer, and she was still doing aerobic exercises. But if you go through the requirements, you have to have a life expectancy of less than 6 months. She clearly had no life expectancy of 6 months. She had definitely had more, and the pain, she had no pain, but what was going on is she had depression. And that goes back to the statistics that 15 out of 58 participants in the study were either depressed or experiencing feelings of extreme hopelessness. And the requirement is that both doctors must have a medical condition that impairs the judgment. They can't go through with it. And depression is definitely something that impairs someone's judgment. And that's all.